Okay, good morning, all of you. Let's get started. So this is next topic, general one-dimensional boundary value problem and its applications. Okay, I suggest you please take a note of this differential equation, and please note that here this is a general boundary value problem in the sense the idea of solving this kind or developing element equations for this kind of problem is, if you come across a boundary value problem in your domain, in the sense whatever area you are working, and then you compare that differential equation or that boundary value problem, governing differential equation with this and corresponding boundary conditions with this, and if you are able to identify the corresponding quantity, you can easily write the element equations. So this is similar to developing a formula, something like a plus b whole square. A plus b whole square is a square plus b square plus 2ab. If you, irrespective of what a and b stand for, once you have that kind of format, you can easily write, expand it. So that is the idea of this. Developing element equations for this general boundary value problem. So please take a note of it. You can read this one. A large class of practical one-dimensional problems is governed by a linear second-order differential equation of the following form. K as a function of x. K is some coefficient. K is some coefficient. T here is some field variable. T can be your displacement, or T can be something else, or T can be your angle of twist. So for whatever you have seen applications, from that I am just telling. Or T can be the temperature. Okay. So T is a field variable, and these are some coefficients. K as a function of x, P as a function of x, Q as a function of x. And you need to solve this differential equation, which is linear. This is linear second order differential equation. Okay, this is the linear second order differential equation, and over this domain, going from x0 to xl, where k as a function of x, p as a function of x, q as a function of x are known coefficient functions, and t is some field variable for which you are trying to solve. T is a quantity which you are trying to solve. And this is the second order differential equation, so you require two boundary conditions to solve this one, this boundary value problem. These two boundary conditions can be a combination of essential boundary condition and natural boundary condition, or both essential boundary conditions or both natural boundary conditions. So you require two boundary conditions to solve for this. So since we are developing a general, for a general problem, we are developing element equations. So we'll see here, we can take a combination. We can have either essential boundary conditions or natural boundary conditions alone, or a combination of them. The appropriate boundary conditions for the problem are of the following form. At x is equal to 0, sorry, at x is equal to x naught, at x is equal to x naught, t is equal to t naught, a specified constant. And you can see here, this is second order differential equation. So this is the 0th order equation. So this is going to be essential boundary condition. Or at x is equal to x naught, you can have a natural boundary condition. X is equal to x naught, you can have a natural boundary condition like this. Similarly, at x is equal to xl, you have essential boundary condition or natural boundary condition. I suggest you please take a note of this, all these equations. Please take a note of all these equations. Once you understand how we are going to develop the element equations for this kind of problem, irrespective of whatever domain that you are planning to work, you should be able to apply these concepts. Okay, please take a note of this, all these equations. And once we have the differential equation, boundary conditions, we can adopt either variational approach or Galerkin approach. Irrespective of whether you follow variational approach or Galerkin approach, finally the solution that you get should not depend on that. Okay, so please take a note of this, all these equations here. And you can see here at x is equal to x naught, kx, px, and qx, they are evaluated at x is equal to x naught. They are evaluated at x is equal to x naught. Okay. So k naught is nothing but k evaluated at x naught, alpha naught, beta naught are some constants. So please take a note of this. So if it is a variational method, what is the procedure? Given boundary value problem or given a governing differential equation, you need to multiply with the variation of the quantity that you are trying to solve for. Here we are trying to solve for this t. So multiply this with variation of t, integrate over the problem domain, integrate between x naught to xn. So that is the first step if it is variational method. I hope you have taken note of this. So I'll go to the next slide. So we need to, if it is variational method, we need to derive equivalent variational functional. Derivation, the derivation of a variational functional for the boundary value problem follows these steps. These are the steps. The governing differential equation, you need to multiply with variation of t, integrate from x naught to xn. First step. And this is the second order differential equation. So you apply integration by parts on the first term, integration by parts on the first term. The other terms remains as they are. When you apply integration by parts on the first term, that is going to result in two boundary terms and one integral term. And finally, once you apply integration by parts on this term, first term, that results in this. Please take a note of it. And once we have this, we can apply variational identities and rewrite some of the quantities like this one. This is nothing but derivative of t with respect to x multiplied by derivative of variation of t with respect to x. This can be written in this manner. K is like a constant. K is like a constant. Okay. So k is function of x. So variation operator is going to operate on the field variable. So k is going to act like a constant. So this entire term can be written like this. And similarly, this one, p is going to act like a constant because p is function of x. When you apply variation operator, q is going to act like a constant when you apply variation operator. So p times t times variation of t can be written like this. Q times variation of t can be written like this. So finally, substituting all this term is going to become this. And we need to further simplify these boundary terms based on the boundary conditions that are given. So please take a note of this. So now we need to focus on these two terms. This is nothing but variation of t. Variation of t evaluated at x is equal to L multiplied by k times derivative of t with respect to x evaluated at x is equal to L. Similarly, here it is variation of t evaluated at x is equal to 0 multiplied by k times derivative of t with respect to x evaluated at x is equal to 0. If essential boundary conditions are specified, variation of t, if essential boundary conditions are specified at x is equal to 0 and at x is equal to L, these two terms are going to go to 0 because variation of t, wherever you apply essential boundary conditions at those locations, variation of t is going to be 0. So these two terms are going to drop if at both ends, both at x is equal to 0, x is equal to L, essential boundary condition is specified. If this boundary condition is specified, then these two terms are going to drop. Instead of that, if natural boundary conditions are specified, we need to substitute those natural boundary conditions here. Okay. So we look at the general case. We look at more general case that is corresponding to natural boundary conditions. If natural boundary condition is applied here and here at x is equal to 0 and at x is equal to L, so that is this. If natural boundary condition is applied, k times derivative of t at x is derivative of t with respect to x evaluated at x is equal to 0 becomes minus alpha naught times t minus beta naught. You rearrange this equation. Similarly, if natural boundary condition is specified at x is equal to L, k times kl or k multiplied by derivative of t with respect to x evaluated at x is equal to L is going to be equal to minus alpha lt minus beta L. So that is what you need to substitute here to get more general equations. So we will apply that. So that is what is done here. From natural boundary condition, if the essential boundary conditions are applied at both the locations x is equal to 0, x is equal to L, both terms are going to drop. So that is not that's not a big thing. Okay. So more general cases if natural boundary conditions are applied. So this k times k naught times derivative of t with respect to x can be written like this. K L times derivative of t with respect to x can be written like this. So substituting these two terms at x is equal to 0 and x is equal to L can be simplified in this manner. applying the variational identities. So please take a note of this. I'm repeatedly telling you to take a note of it. If you are not taking, I cannot help you. Okay. So these two terms, first two terms becomes this or can be written like this. Combining these terms with the other terms, you can this is what it becomes. So now you have nicely in the form variation of some quantity inside is equal to 0. Inside the bracket is equal to 0. This is nothing but your variational function. Whatever is there inside the square bracket, that is your variational function. So please take a note of this. So this is your variational functional. So this can be written as this whatever is there inside the square bracket, that can be written as I as a function of field variable t, I as a function of t. Okay, so that is what is written here. Thus, appropriate functional for the boundary value problem is this one. So now to proceed further, what we need to do, we need to decide on the type of element we are going to adopt, whether we are going to adopt 2-node element or 3-node element, 4-node element, like that. Okay, so far we know we have studied 2-node element, bar element. So same element we can apply here. So this is the equivalent variational functional. Using this functional, you can read this. Using this functional, equations for a 2-node linear finite element are derived. That is what we are going to see. The Rayleigh-Grigg method is used for, as you have seen, we have used variational method or Rayleigh-Grigg method. Instead of that, Galerkin method also can be used to get the same equations without any difficulty. And once we derive the element equations, okay, we can see solutions of practical problems like heat flow, fluid flow, column buckling. Because for all these problems, for all these kinds of problem, the differential equation or the boundary value problem that you are trying to solve for, resulting from any of these physical phenomena, is going to have similar kind of structure. So only thing is, your job is to identify what is kx, what is px, what is qx. Here you need to identify for a given problem what is kx, px, qx. For some of the problems, kx may be some constant, or it's kx may be 1. For some problems, px and qx may be 0. All kinds of things may happen. And similarly, you can match the boundary conditions and try to find what is k naught, alpha naught, beta naught, and kl, alpha L, beta L. Once you identify all these parameters, you should be able to write the element equations easily for any of the problem. Even if you are not working in these areas, even if you don't have knowledge in these areas, you can easily write the element equations, treating it as a mathematical problem. So now let's see how to use the 2-node finite element shape functions and further simplify this to get the element equations. So this is the equivalent variational functional. Please take a note of it. Any questions here? Any questions? So now we need to just go and see 2-node element shape functions and other things here. You can read the title: a linear finite element for general one-dimensional boundary value problem. Linear finite element, in the sense 2-node finite element. 2-node finite element looks like this. In one-dimensional case, node 1 is located at x1, node 2 is located at x2, length of the element is L, field variable value at node 1 is t1, field variable value at node 2 is t2, and this is the direction, the positive direction of this axis of this element. Okay, a typical 2-node element for boundary value problem is shown here. The unknown solutions at nodes is identified as T1 and T2. And now we need to apply the corresponding approximation, finite element approximation, using this element into this here. So the functional is this one. Functional is this one. So x is equal to 0 to x is equal to L. Here it is x is equal to 0 to x is equal to L. But we are going to develop element equations for a element. So the element goes from x1 to x2. So x is equal to 0 becomes x1, x is equal to L becomes x2. And similarly other things. Wherever x0 is there, replace with x1. Wherever xl is there, replace with x2. And similarly, wherever k0, alpha naught, beta naught are there, replace with k1, beta 1, or alpha 1, beta 1. Similarly, KL, alpha L, beta L are there, replace with K2, alpha 2, beta 2. Okay, here that is what all mentioned here. So now let's see this one. For this kind of element, you know the element shape functions. If you had solved the assignment problems, you know the element shape functions, all that is revised or recapped here. What is the relation between local coordinate system to the global or x coordinate system to the s coordinate system? What is the relation between parent element coordinate system to the actual element coordinate system? And why this is required? Because we can change the limits of integrations from -1 to 1, because parent element goes from -1 to 1 irrespective of whatever x1 and x2 are. Okay. So x is equal to x1 corresponds to s is equal to -1, x is equal to x2 corresponds to s is equal to 1, all that, whatever you studied, all that. So please take a note of this quickly. And also you can see here, here derivative of t with respect to x square is there. So this we already discussed how to write this kind of things. And this is a scalar quantity, so you can write it as t derivative of t with respect to x transpose times derivative of t with respect to x. Derivative of t with respect to x is can be written as b transpose d, all that, whatever you studied. T can be written as n transpose t, all that. Okay, here. Please take a note of it, whatever is shown here. And if there is any question here, you can raise that here. It's all written with pen, okay? Because this is all like based on whatever you studied. This is all written with pen here. Please take a note of it. Anything is not clear, please let me know. Here t can be written as n1 t1 plus n2 t2 or n transpose t. N transpose t is defined as this one, like this. And everything here, everything is written in terms of s coordinate system. Everything is written in terms of s coordinate system, because we are going to change the limits of integrations. And wherever dx is there, we are going to replace with L over 2 times ds. So everything is written in terms of here d, this d vector is nothing but t1, t2. Nodal values of the field variables. Please take a note of this. Lot of information is there in this slide. Okay, please take time and try to understand this. Lot of information is there, because all this information we need to plug it into this equivalent functional. In this functional we need to substitute. So please take a note of this. Once you take note of it, I don't know whether you are doing it or not, but please take my suggestions seriously. Once you take a note of all this, you can substitute. So this is this term is what is shown here. This term is what is shown here. Okay. Similarly here it is a t square. T square can be written as t transpose t, and then it can be simplified. N transpose d you can substitute and then simplify this. Similarly other things. Okay. So once you have all this, here you can see derivative of t with respect to x can be written using chain rule in this manner. And just now we noted what is derivative of t with respect to s. And t can be written as n transpose d. D is nothing but t1, t2 put in a vector, column vector. N transpose is defined as like a row vector. And this is derivative of t with respect to s. Derivative of t with respect to x can be written as like this, b transpose d. And derivative of t with respect to x whole square, or square of the derivative of t with respect to x can be written like this. Is all straightforward. Once you understand the concept, these are all straightforward. And please note that by doing this exercise, you should be able to derive for any boundary value problem that you come across, which may not fit into this kind of format. Please note that whatever format for general one-dimensional boundary value problem we have chosen, that is one kind of thing. Sometimes the given problem that you, or the problem that you encounter may not have this strict kind of structure. In that case, you need to start from the fundamentals and then derive the element equations. So this exercise even helps you to have an understanding to face that kind of situations. So this is what derivative of t with respect to x square looks like in terms of nodal values of the two-node finite element. Okay. So substitute all this information. This first term becomes this one. First term is simplified. And kk, some quantity is defined here. Kk is some quantity is defined. Some it's going to be a matrix, and when you take integral, this k, if it is function of x, if you don't know the form of that at this stage, you will not be able to integrate. If you don't know what is kx looks like, you may not be able to integrate. So here it is written in terms of k, assuming k to be constant. Assuming k, if k is constant, then it can be simplified. That is what is shown here. That is what is mentioned. Explicit integration is possible only if the coefficient k is given as a specific function of x. Since we are deriving the element equations at this stage, we don't know how the k looks like for a specific problem. So either you take like this, or assuming k to be constant, you can write this kk like this. What about second term? Second term involves p times t square. How to simplify the second term? T square can be written as t transpose t. T is n transpose d. All that, whatever you studied, you please cross check whether all this algebra is correct or not. Okay. And similarly here, explicit form of this can be written only if p as a function of x is given. For the present, assuming p to be constant, it is simplified. If p is constant, the second term looks like this. and that is this whatever quantity is there, this matrix, it is denoted with Kp. Kp is nothing but this one. And you can see here what is the need of mapping. Mapping we require because we learned what is Gaussian integration or Gaussian quadrature, where the limits, it is better to have limits from -1 to 1. So that is the reason for this mapping. Mapping of actual element to a parent element with node 1 at s is equal to -1 and node 2 at s is equal to 1. So the integrals becomes with limits -1 to 1. So then we can easily apply, irrespective of whatever this integrand, whatever is there, whatever quantity you are trying to integrate, however complicated it may be, we can easily adopt Gaussian quadrature and simplify this. I hope you have all of you have attempted that assignment. Okay, so by this time, when I say something like that, you should be able to understand what exactly I mean. Okay, so this is the second term, and the third term involves q times t. Third term involves q times t. And what is t? N transpose d. Simplify that. And here, please note, whenever you have n transpose n or n transpose and b transpose, such kind of terms, when you have, you will get a matrix. And when you have only the this shape function vector alone, then you are going to get a vector. So here you are going to get a vector in this form. You please see all the algebra and convince yourself. And RQ is defined. RQ is defined like this. RQ transpose is defined like a column vector. RQ is going to be a row vector. D is already a column vector. T1, T2. Okay. And finally, when you multiply, you should get a scalar quantity. Why you should get a scalar quantity? Because you see, this I is a scalar. Finally, when you do all this, it's going to be a scalar quantity. So you that kind of understanding helps you to cross check the dimensions. Okay. So you can see here whether suppose you want to check whether this the way it is written is correct or not. You just see when you multiply RQ transpose D whether you are going to get a scalar or not. That kind of self checks you need to make a note, and those kind of self checks you can adopt whenever it is required. So RQ transpose is this. Again, if Q is constant, how this RQ transpose looks like, that is what is written. Okay, you got the third term, and then boundary terms. You have this as a boundary term, this is a second boundary term. These two boundary terms can be combined and group the terms having alphas and betas separately. Group the terms having alphas, betas separately. Please note that T1, T2 are the nodal values. T1 square can be written as T1 transpose T1. Similarly, T2 square can be written as T2 transpose T2. So with all that kind of understanding, this term can be written like this. And defining K alpha, which is nothing but this one, comprising of the coefficients alphas. And second term here, the second boundary term can be written like this. So finally your this equivalent functional, after applying the finite element approximation, it looks like this. So please take a note of it. I'm going slowly, understand? with hope that everything is going to be clear to you. So once you get equal and functional in terms of finite element approximation, what is the next step? You need to apply the stationarity conditions. You need to take partial derivative of I with respect to t1 equated to 0, partial derivative of I with respect to t2 equated to 0, and you get two equations. Combine the two equations, then you are going to get element equations. So that is what is done here, applying stationarity conditions. Instead of t1, t2 taken derivative taken separately, here the derivative is taken with respect to this vector d, and finally you are going to get an equation system like this, element equation system, kd equal to r, where k is having contribution from k, the coefficient k, coefficient p, and alpha, and contribution to this r is going to be from q and beta. So these are the element equations, assuming the coefficients k, q, k, p, q are all constants. And if these are all not constants, you need to go back and see, apply the numerical integration, simplify what is this k, 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 p, k alpha. You can read this one. Note that alpha and beta terms result from natural boundary conditions specified at the ends. For example, if there is a natural boundary condition specified only at node 1 of an element, then alpha 1 and beta 1 terms must come from that natural boundary conditions, and alpha 2 and beta 2 terms are 0. Also remember that the explicit expressions for element equations assume k, p, q to be constant over an element. If these values are not constant, one can determine new element matrices by carrying out integrations, numerical integrations. Okay. Alternatively, the solution domain can be divided into a large number of elements, and over each element, an average value of these parameters can be used as a constant. Anyway, that is a different thing. Once you are comfortable, then you can do that kind of experiment. Okay. This obviously introduces another approximation to the solution procedure. Okay. However, as the number of elements is increased, the error due to this approximation should be negligible. Anyway, this alternatively, whatever is written here, this part, at this stage you can ignore it. Okay. Once you understand the concepts, once your understanding of the concepts is perfect, then you can go through it and try to see what it actually means. At this stage, you can ignore this. So these are the element equations assuming k, p, q are constants. So now let's see an application of it. Let's see an application of it. One-dimensional heat flow. Okay. Even though it is not in your domain. Okay. It is not in your domain of whatever you are studying. You try to see, once you have this general one-dimensional boundary value problem, you see the application of it in various domains. This section presents solution of some steady-state one-dimensional heat flow problems using linear finite element equation developed just now. Whatever we developed, heat conduction alone is considered first. Conduction convection problems are considered later. So steady-state heat conduction. If somebody has taken a course on thermodynamics or heat-related thing, heat flow-related things, they may be knowing how the steady-state, one-dimensional steady-state heat conduction problem, the governing differential equation is going to look like. So this is how the governing differential equation is going to look like for heat conduction problem. Okay, steady state heat conduction problem. Only thing is, what is this coefficient Kxx? This is similar to the coefficient K, whatever we have seen in the general boundary value problem. And the T here becomes the temperature, field variable T becomes temperature. P is 0, Q is not a function of X here. Q is not a function of X. What is this Kxx? It is written Kxx, and what is this Q? What they stand for in steady state heat conduction? Kxx is nothing but thermal conductivity in X direction. And what are the units for it? It is all given here. T is the temperature. Either it is in centigrade or Fahrenheit. And Q is the heat generated. And what are the corresponding units they are given here? So now let's say you don't know anything about heat conduction problem. You never studied about it, but still you can write the element equations. You just compare. You just compare this. This is the element equation for general boundary value problem. Now, wherever K is there, replace with Kxx. P is 0. Q is equal to Q, constant. And alphas and betas depends on the boundary conditions that are given. Okay. So that is how you can develop the element equations. So now let's see. And how this equation is derived. How this equation is derived, that is what is shown here. If somebody is interested, who don't know the basics of this heat conduction, steady state heat conduction, they can go through this, okay? I'm not going to go in detail all this, okay? So this actually gives you the details of how that governing differential equation is obtained, okay? And what about the boundary conditions? What about the boundary conditions? Boundary conditions can be, anyway, this entire thing is describing how you got that governing differential equation. If somebody wants, they can go through that, okay? So now what are the boundary conditions for this problem? Steady state heat conduction problem. Obviously, a temperature is the unknown quantity. Essential boundary condition is temperature specified at one location or heat flow specified at another location. Heat flow can be specified or temperature can be specified. What is heat flow? Heat flow is given by this this thermal conductivity multiplied by gradient of temperature. That is your heat flow. So this is how the natural boundary conditions looks like for steady state heat conduction problem. So let's say this is how the boundary conditions are defined. Then you can easily form a matrix or form a table like this. How this? What is this table is showing? What is the variable in general boundary value problem? What is the corresponding variable in the heat conduction problem? And what actually it represents? In general boundary value problem, field variable T is there, and here also T is there, but here T, steady state heat conduction problem, T represents temperature. In general boundary value problem, coefficient K as a function of X is there, and that is taking a form of Kxx in steady state heat conduction problem that has a meaning thermal conductivity. P is in general boundary value problem, P as a function of X is there, but in steady state heat conduction problem, such quantity is not there, 0. Q is there in general form, and corresponding quantity is there, Q, but this is a constant here. Q is not function of X, and what Q actually represents? It is heat source. Alpha is not there. How do you say alpha is not there? You see this equation. This equation you need to compare with K times derivative of T with respect to X plus alpha times L alpha. You can see this one. This is the general boundary value problem. K times derivative of t with respect to x plus alpha times t plus beta. I'm just saying I'm dropping this not, because if I drop this not, if I say k times derivative of t with respect to x, alpha times t beta, that is applicable even for the whether x is equal to x naught or x is equal to x1 or x is equal to xl or x is equal to x2. Okay, so if you see your heat flow, the natural boundary condition for steady state heat conduction problem, and compare that with this. This is taking the place of kxx times derivative of t with respect to x, and alpha is 0, beta is your q. So that is what is written. So you can make a table like this. Here, beta is q. What is this q? Specified heat flow. So for heat conduction problem, so now somebody who studied this steady state heat conduction problem, now if you want to write the, so if I say I'm planning to use 2-node finite element, and please give me element equations, you can directly plug in all this information here by making that kind of comparison and give me the element equations. So here, if you see, just a minute, here k is, I need to replace with kxx, p is equal to 0, alpha 1, alpha 2. What is alpha 1, alpha 2? They are zeros. So this entire, this k becomes only this one. This quantity is 0, this quantity is 0. And what about r? R is comprising of this plus this. Q is there, heat source is there, beta 1, beta 2. What is beta 1, beta 2? They are small q. They are nothing but small q. So here. So element equations for steady state heat conduction problem using 2-node finite element looks like this. So if you know thermal conductivity, if you know heat source, and if any other heat flow is there, any other heat flow is there, that if you know, you can easily solve this. And where is the application of it? Don't think that I'm a civil engineer, I'm a structural engineer, I don't require this one. Don't be of that kind of opinion. Suppose if you are interested in outside temperature, in summer outside temperature is very hot, okay, maybe 40 degrees or even 50 degrees centigrade, and you have a brick wall, of a certain thickness, okay, and you want to know how the heat flow is going to be from outside 40 ambient, outside temperature, how much heat is going to flow through that wall to inside. If you want to know that, you can apply this kind of thing. It's structural engineer has to solve that problem. Structural engineer has to solve such kind of problem. So here, that is what is illustrated in this example. A wall is there, outside temperature or temperature on this face is 200 degrees centigrade, and there is assume no heat loss due to convection. Insulated boundary. There is no heat loss. If that is the case, if this temperature on this face is 200 degrees centigrade, what is going to be temperature on this face or temperature across the wall? And this is going to be a one-dimensional problem, because heat is going to flow from this face to this face only along this direction. So this wall thickness of 1 meter can be divided into, you decide how many elements you want to divide, and then solve it. Okay. So information that is given, as shown in figure, inside of a 1 meter thick wall is maintained at a constant temperature of 200 degrees centigrade, while outside is insulated. Sorry, whatever I told, this is inside, like it's a furnace. You can imagine this is a furnace. This wall is part of a furnace, and that inside the temperature is 200 degrees centigrade, outside is insulated. You are not allowing heat to go out. because this is a furnace. Inside, I am going to do some experiment or something like that, or I am going to melt something. I need to maintain 200 degrees centigrade inside. While the outside is insulated, no heat flow. There is a uniform heat source inside generating whatever. What is the value of Q inside? That is given. Thermal conductivity, depending on the material with which this wall is made of, is given. Find the temperature distribution in the wall. How the temperature distribution is going to be across 1 meter thickness. Assuming the wall is very high, it is possible to model unit slice of wall as one-dimensional problem. No heat can flow from top and bottom faces of the model. So it's going to be one-dimensional. 4-element discretization is used. 4 elements are used. So this is actually, don't assume this is like a 1 element to like that. This is along this length only. This is 1 element. That is this. This is a line element. Okay. This is 1 element. Second, third, 4 elements are taken across the thickness of the wall. 1 meter wall. So you can see 1 divided by 4 everywhere. Equal length elements. And wall is assumed to be a very long wall, or the wall is very high. If wall is very high, then the boundary, this boundary conditions, that they are not going to have any effect. So that is the idea of assuming it to be a long wall, or the wall being very tall. So it's basically one-dimensional boundary value problem. Boundary conditions at T is equal to T value, temperature value at X is equal to 0 is 200. And outside face, this face is insulated. Insulated means Q is 0. So derivative of Kxx, negative Kxx multiplied by derivative of T with respect to X, evaluated at X is equal to 1 meter. This location is 1 meter. Here X is equal to 0. Here at X is equal to 1 meter. So evaluated at 1 meter, Q is 0. There is no heat flow outside. So it is insulated. So Q is 0. Okay. And what it translates, these are the boundary conditions. What it translates, X is equal to 0 corresponds to node 1. And this X is equal to 1 meter corresponds to node 5. Q5 is equal to 0. So with all this, now you have T1 is equal to 0. Q5 is equal to 0. So you apply, you derive or write the element equation for each of the elements. It's going to be identical for all the elements. It's going to be identical for all the elements. And you can see here zeros are there. Why these are all zeros? Why these are all zeros? You can see here, if this element, if you see for first element, let's say first element node 1, node 2. For second element, node 2 is going to be its first node. So when you see the contribution, it's going to be here when you add second element, or here it's going to be Q1 minus Q2, that is from first element, plus Q2 minus Q3. So minus Q2 and plus Q2 gets cancelled. That's why it's 0 here. Similarly, here also it's going to be 0. Here also it's going to be 0. So Q1 will be there, first one. Q5 is anyway 0. Okay, Q5 is anyway 0. And then you can solve these equations with that. So Q1 is unknown. Q5 is 0. With that kind of information, you can solve this. How to solve this? Because here this quantity is not 0. This quantity is this quantity is not 0. This quantity is not 0. So how to solve this? Everything is explained. You can go through it. Okay. They were using partitioning of element or matrices. Partitioning of matrices. You can solve this. and determine T2, T3, T4, T5. And if you want, you can determine what is Q, what is Q1. If you want, you can come back and determine what is Q1. Okay. And once you have T1, T2, T3, T4, T5, T1 is 200 degrees centigrade. So then you can plot across the thickness of the wall, thickness of 1 meter, how the temperature distribution is going to be. So this is about steady state heat conduction, application of general boundary value problem that we looked at. In tomorrow's class, we'll see the heat conduction and convection. Okay. And there you can see additional terms coming in. So this is how you can see the application of this. And once you are comfortable with this, you should be able to solve any boundary value problem. Okay. I'm going to stop here. Any questions? And tomorrow is going to be, class is going to be there tomorrow. And next week, it's a break. And but I'm going to give you an assignment. You can start attempting that assignment. Okay. Anyway, if you have any questions, please keep those questions with you and we can discuss in tomorrow's class. Thank you.